of the volunteers that's particularly interested in all things health and well-being with the Irish Support Agency. We have some brilliant events lined up for the next few months that we'll be really excited to share with you soon. So if you're not familiar with the Irish Support Agency, do check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and also on our website, so you can stay tuned for the stuff we have planned over Mental Health Month, which is next month, and leading us into Christmas, recognising that it's probably quite a challenging year for the Irish community in Sydney, being away from home. So we're going to have lots of events to get you, you know, engaged and involved again in the community. So we've run a few sessions, as Ronan mentioned. We've done quite a few now since about May time with the Irish 30. There was a session that we ran a while back where we just, you know, touched gently onto sleep, and I know that there was so much interest from people on that topic, and it really does seem to be the hot topic at the moment that lots of people are waking up to, if you excuse my pun, about the impact that it has on our health and well-being. So I'm really pleased to welcome our sleep expert tonight, which is Kellie Hamill. Kellie and I actually met at university at home many moons ago when we were both studying nutrition. So I'll be interested to see how Kellie has found her way into sleep research and the link there. So Kellie is project coordinator of the REM sleep study in Monash University, and she's going to explain a little bit about her background and how she ended up at Monash and working in the area of sleep. So Kellie, take it away.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen with you. There we go. Okay. And so I'll go through a bit of a kind of a background, firstly, about kind of how I got to sleep and kind of how I got to Australia. So I grew up in Grey Abbey in Northern Ireland, and then I went to Coleraine University on the north coast of Northern Ireland, and I studied human nutrition. At that stage, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, so I just kind of studied something that I enjoyed, and I'd always had an interest in kind of health and well-being, nutrition, and mental health and that sort of thing. So then on completion of my degree, I wanted to do some travel. So I thought instead of kind of settling down and getting a job, I would go off traveling, and I came to Australia. My partner and I both came, and we spent probably about a year and a half kind of traveling around. In that time we did our farm work in Orange, New South Wales, to get our second year visa. And then we decided that we wanted to come back and kind of settle in Melbourne, and time to kind of get a real world job. So I started working at the nutritional research kind of department at Monash University. And then after 6 months, I was lucky enough to get a job that they sponsored me. So I could kind of stay a bit more permanently. It was when I was kind of doing the nutritional research, and the department was linked up with a sleep department as well, and I started to kind of become really interested in kind of sleep and the impact that sleep has on our mental health and on our day-to-day functioning. So sleep it really fascinated me, as it has such an impact on our kind of the next day, and also kind of our functioning kind of during the weeks and kind of months of having maybe sleep deprivation. So I then moved into a role looking at both nutrition and sleep. My kind of key area that I'm interested in is insomnia, or kind of people who have poor sleep, how that impacts mental health. I also have a bit of interest in kind of consumer sleep trackers, and how kind of they actually track our sleep, and if they're doing a good job and we can believe them. And then more recently, I've started working in the PTSD field, and kind of seeing how poor sleep in those who have PTSD can affect on their emotional processing. So I'll just then kind of briefly talk about sleep. Many people think that sleep is a time where our body kind of shuts down and it's kind of rested and not really doing anything, but it's in fact kind of the opposite. So during sleep, our brain's pretty active. Sometimes it's as active as we would be when we are conscious, because sleep is kind of the time when we're processing memories, we're growing and repairing cells. Exactly how long or the reason why we need sleep is kind of not really understood, but we do know that if we don't get sleep, it's kind of critical for the functions of our health and well-being. So as I kind of mentioned, that sleep is needed for kind of consolidation of memories. That's kind of, as we go about our day-to-day lives, our brain is constantly processing memories, but it doesn't actually store them straight away. So it's not until we actually sleep that the short-term memories are embedded into kind of long-term memories as such. So there's been a lot of research kind of to show that after a good night's sleep and after kind of sleeping, your brain can retain information and perform better on memory tasks compared to when you've had a poor night's sleep. So really kind of our bodies need sleep for rejuvenation, restoration, growing, repairing, and kind of everything that we do to function. A big question is always how much sleep do I need, and kind of what's the optimal sleep. So I just put this slide up here to kind of show how sleep changes throughout the life cycle. So from a kind of a newborn, infant, toddler, they require a lot of sleep, and they pretty much are asleep more than they're awake, and that's because during that stage of their life, they're learning to speak, learning motor skills, kind of becoming social. So sleep is really needed kind of for that developmental. As we kind of get older, we need slightly less sleep. And then as we kind of become an older adult, we need kind of even less sleep again. And that's because we're not processing as much or learning as much. I just thought I'd touch on it, there is slight differences in sleep compared to males and females, which I would like to point out that females need longer sleep. So usually about kind of 20 to 30 minutes extra a night. And that's because females tend to kind of multitask a bit more and kind of use their brain slightly more during the day and just need kind of restoration at night. I thought I'd also point out, just kind of preempting some questions, that there is a difference between kind of time in bed and the time you've been asleep. So sometimes kind of people say that, oh, I've been in bed for a long time, you know, I must have had lots of sleep. It's kind of, sometimes you can be in bed and not actually be sleeping, and then that kind of has a knock-on effect, and you're actually getting less sleep than you would if you were only in bed for kind of 8 hours. So I'll touch on this when we go into kind of tips of how to improve your sleep later on. So some of the reasons why we can have poor sleep, which I'm sure many people have kind of experienced. So stress can kind of have an impact on our sleep. So if we're kind of stressed about work, generally you lie down in bed and that's when you think about, oh, what I need to do the next day, what's going on in work. During maybe exam time at uni or at any stage, you'll sleep less or have a poor night's sleep because your brain is overthinking about all the things you need to do. Lifestyle has an impact, where generally the first thing that we forgo is our sleep. We'd rather go out and socialize, or we'd rather kind of get up early to do like some sports, but then we still want to go out that night for dinner and that. So generally we then sleep a lot less. Work can have an impact as well. So if you kind of have to get up early for work, then electronic devices, and again I'll kind of touch on this and how and why it has such an impact. Then shift work can really impact our sleep. So generally, if you're working a night shift, that's when you're meant to be sleeping. So your body thinks it's meant to be sleeping, and all of the hormones, the sleep promoting hormones, are going, but you're actually working. So you're not probably functioning your best. Then when you come home from a night shift, you're telling your body to go to sleep, when actually biologically your body wants to be awake. So you're constantly kind of fighting this biological hormones that are telling you, I want to sleep when I'm working, and I want to work when I'm sleeping, and that can kind of have a huge impact. Diet and alcohol can have an impact. So kind of eating the wrong types of food too close to bedtime, so like spicy foods can kind of, whenever you're trying to digest them lying down, you can kind of get maybe reflux or that sort of thing. Alcohol consumption as well. A lot of people think that alcohol helps you sleep, and in a way it does help you maybe get off to sleep because it's a sedative, but it affects your sleep quality. So it affects a stage called REM stage, and that's your consolidation stage of sleep. So generally then you're not processing everything when you've had a big night of alcohol. Another thing, maybe exercise. You can be exercising too much or exercising too little, kind of a battle. And then napping. A lot of people think napping is maybe a good thing, but actually napping can result in poor sleep, because if you think about it, you're kind of sleeping off something during the day, then whenever you're ready to go to sleep, your brain's already kind of had its nap, had its shutdown, and then it's not going to be ready to go to sleep whenever you actually want to. So it's kind of a bit of it makes you feel better maybe straight away, but in the long term actually has a negative effect on your kind of overnight sleep. So then I thought I'd just quickly go through some tips about your sleep, and I'll also just touch on kind of important ones during COVID times as well. So devices, so limit screen time. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard about kind of blue light emitting from devices and how that affects your sleep. It's the blue light in the device that actually reduces your sleep promoting hormone to start being excreted. So that's kind of why if you have light on during the night, your sleepy hormone doesn't kind of start working, so you don't actually become ready to go to sleep. A tip for that is to kind of maybe like 30 minutes, an hour before going to bed, just shut down from kind of watching devices, which I know is pretty hard in the world we live in right now, or even putting like a blue filter on things. Also, maybe whenever you're getting ready for bed, to turn the lights down, so that you're starting your body ready for that melatonin production. One thing here as well, kind of COVID related, to limit your screen time is also a good time to limit your social media time, so that you're not kind of looking at all of the kind of negative news that's going on in the world, and then that's kind of stimulating your brain. You want to try and calm down towards kind of your bedtime. So kind of looking at the news is probably not a good thing. Then regular bed and wake times kind of seems pretty straightforward, but it kind of just keeps your internal body clock in line. So a lot of people may try and kind of catch up and sleep at the weekend, but actually 2 days of catching up and sleep can just throw your body off again. So you're better just trying to be consistent. And that also means probably being consistent when you're working from home. So a lot of people I know are having trouble sleeping at the minute because they're staying up late because they don't have to get up as early the next day because their commute's cut, or, you know, work doesn't have to start at 9, it can start at 10. So it's kind of throwing everyone's rhythms off a bit. So it's really kind of important that during this time as well that we do have scheduled bed and wake times. Kind of mentioned as well, limiting of kind of food and drinking late at night. So yeah, heavy meals can just mean that you're sluggish, your body is trying to digest food when you're trying to go to sleep, and it just isn't really kind of working. Another thing though is that if you go to sleep hungry, that can then mean that you struggle to get to sleep because your tummy's rumbling. So it's kind of that fine balance that maybe do have a snack, but just not like a meal before bed. Then this is kind of an interesting one, saying that your bed is for sleeping. So basically we want to try and do only kind of sleeping in the bedroom, so that your mind, your brain kind of associates the bed with sleep. A lot of people, if they kind of sit in their bed to do work or to kind of reply to emails and that sort of thing, your brain is then stimulated and starts to associate the bed with some stimulation. So you want to make sure that you kind of separate that, so that whenever you're ready to go to bed, you're going to go to sleep, rather than your brain thinking, oh, I'm going to actually reply to some emails and I'm going to kind of get a bit like switched on again, which is kind of the opposite to what we want. Then we've got kind of a bedtime routine. So I know that sounds kind of probably quite childish in a way, but having a bedtime routine is pretty important, just so that, and it doesn't have to be a huge bedtime routine, but it's just like maybe turning off the TV 30 minutes before bed, maybe reading, doing something that relaxes you, having some meditation, listening to a podcast, and it just kind of helps your brain to slow down and get ready for sleep. And then just something kind of over COVID times that we started to kind of tell people is to connect with others. So if you kind of have any concerns or anything, talk them through with others, so that you're maybe not as stressed, or you're not kind of worrying so much before you're going to bed. But also kind of avoid doing this right before bed, because you don't want to get kind of more anxious and worried kind of leading up to that bedtime. So that's kind of where I stopped with my presentation. I thought I could take some questions now.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That's really interesting, and I think especially with COVID, and I know that you're in Melbourne at the moment and you're in the more severe lockdown than we are in Sydney, so it's good to understand the impact that can be having. I suppose I'm interested, you mentioned there that you're doing some research into sleep trackers, and I have a Fitbit and I'm like obsessed with checking my sleep in the morning to see how I got on. How accurate are those? Is it something we should be doing, or is it another thing that we're worrying about unnecessarily?
So yeah, we just actually kind of did some publications and research on Fitbits, the Alta HR model. So they are pretty accurate whenever you compare them to kind of research grade sleep tracking devices. They still obviously have their limitations. So we kind of say, yes, it's good to kind of track your sleep, but maybe also take it with a pinch of salt. Like if you've had a really bad night's sleep, maybe it may, like, it goes on motion, so it can kind of it's not 100% kind of true. One thing that I want to point out though with the sleep staging, so a lot of the new sleep trackers are kind of showing all of the different stage that you've slept in. We found that was really unreliable, so that the stages kind of weren't comparable to kind of the true polysomnography that you would have in the laboratory. So there's pros and cons. I think sometimes if you're anxious about your sleep, then I'd probably say don't look at it, because sometimes seeing you sleeping less can actually then create more anxiety about sleep. But then, yeah, it's such a hard one, and it depends kind of how you have been sleeping. But they are, scientifically, they are pretty reliable.
Okay, and I know that when I look at my Fitbit, there's the REM sleep, the light sleep, and the deep sleep.
Yeah.
And when I do look at my sleep, I'm thinking, oh, I only spent really short time in deep sleep. Is that something that's normal? Is, you know, what's the difference in the types of stages there?
Yeah, so again, I would probably, maybe not quite ignore, but I'd probably ignore the kind of the amount of time you've spent in your sleep or your stages and just worry about the overall sleep. Because there's so many variables that, like, whenever in the laboratory, whenever we're testing what stage someone's went into sleep, there's like 10 wires in their head that they're kind of, it has to, you know, certain things have to be shown for stage 1, for stage 2, and so on. So for something on your wrist that isn't connected to anything, I don't really believe that the staging is that accurate.
Okay, so it's normal enough, just as long as you're seeing how many hours you're asleep, that's more relevant.
Yeah.
Rush, we have a couple of questions coming through in the chat. Is it okay if I share them?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Kelly, thank you. That's been fantastic. Really appreciate those insights. So we've got a question from Martina here. Why do we have weird dreams during COVID?
Oh, I think it's because our brains are more active when we are going to sleep. So we're thinking about things more when we're going to sleep, and we're anxious. There's so many studies actually coming out just out of this short time that anxiety is kind of gone through the roof, and then just overthinking can then lead you to kind of having strange dreams. People are also getting more kind of sleep later on in the day, later on in the morning, which is when we have that REM sleep, and REM sleep is our dreaming sleep. So if you're kind of getting more of that, then you're going to have more more weird dreams.
Thank you, Kelly. And the next question from Maura. What are your thoughts on magnesium to help sleep, and do you support this?
Yeah, so I worked in an insomnia clinical trial, and there was a lot of people taking magnesium. So I think that the thought around it is to kind of help with your joints and help kind of your muscles relax, so that you're not maybe waking up or disturbed as much. There isn't that much research to kind of support it, but again, it's kind of one of those placebo effects that if sometimes people can take it and they feel like their sleep's improving, then it's not a bad thing. But there's generally, I don't know, I would kind of stay away from taking kind of medications or supplements just for sleep whenever there's so many other things that you can do first.
Might lead into the next question then. So from Paula, does over-the-counter melatonin help for insomniacs?
Yeah, so over-the-counter melatonin, there's kind of two different melatonins that you can get. You can get slow release or long-term release, and I think like melatonin works if you use it in the right way. So a lot of people kind of will get maybe over-the-counter melatonin, but won't know how to use it. For example, you know, you have to, for a quick release melatonin, you take it maybe 30 minutes before bed. But if someone doesn't really know to take it that soon before bed, they may take it like 2 hours before bed, and then kind of it's defeating the purpose. I think melatonin's pretty good for kind of jet lag and getting your body clock back into kind of sync sometimes, but again, relying on something is it in the long term stops working. We'd kind of try and encourage people to come off melatonin or come off medications and kind of follow more of the kind of sleep hygiene or the sleep restriction kind of advice before kind of continuing with melatonin.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a few more questions. Have you done much research on sleep affecting females going through perimenopause and menopause?
I haven't, but there definitely is there is an effect on that. Hormones have such an effect on our bodies with sleep, and even kind of women throughout kind of the life cycle, there's certain stages of the month where we'll our sleep quality will be reduced, and kind of, yeah, as then menopause, it definitely it deteriorates our sleep.
Thanks, Kelly. And next question, any advice for new parents who have limited sleep?
You will get through it, I'm sure. No, I think getting a bedtime routine, I think, for your baby is the best thing, so that you're making sure that your baby's getting enough sleep, and then kind of making sure that you're like, you can then take those naps if you need to. I know I kind of said to stay away from naps, but if you're not getting a full night's sleep, napping during the day may kind of be beneficial to you. And also just realizing that you're probably going to be less, your functioning isn't going to be as great the next day. So just kind of taking care of yourself and not putting too much pressure on yourself for that.
Thank you, Kelly. And that's all. Actually, we might have another question here. It's just coming through. May have missed this, but what is a baseline we need each night in terms of time? So could you maybe go back to, was it possible to go back to that slide?
Yeah.
Would you mind, please? Yeah.
Have we got it? Sorry, I don't know if I went too quick there. There we go. So it does vary for individual. So just because kind of it says, you know, for a young adult 7 to 9, some people can kind of function on 7 hours sleep, and that's fine. Some people do need then that full 9 hours, 10 hours sleep. It's so varied between people, which I think is the hard thing about talking about sleep, because if you're you know, living in a house share or sharing a bed with your partner, your sleep may differ, and also your sleep times may differ. That you know, your partner may be kind of more of a night owl, so they don't get sleepy until a bit later, but you're the opposite. So it's kind of finding that balance whenever you are in a couple as well. But we do say kind of very vague 7 to 9 hours. 8 hours is probably kind of what you should aim for, but definitely people do need a bit longer or a bit less.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks to everyone for lots of great questions. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Just on that, I think something that a lot of people are trying to find out, is there a better time to go to sleep? Some people say the hours before midnight are more important than the hours after it. Is that the case, or does it not really matter when we get them?
Again, that's kind of all driven by each person's body. So as I mentioned, your body produces melatonin, the hormone, and some people's body can produce that, kind of start producing that at 8, 9 o'clock, and they'll be ready to go to sleep for 10 o'clock. Some people then may have a bit of a later melatonin production, and they actually then are not ready to go to bed until kind of midnight or 1 a.m. It's all kind of relative to the person, and I suppose that's why people may need melatonin to help them sleep. So if you're really kind of delayed in that your body doesn't want to go to sleep until 3, 4 a.m., when that's not really kind of convenient and functioning for the world we live in, you may want to use the melatonin to bring that forward to a bit more of a normal bedtime of kind of 10 p.m. But it's all kind of individually driven.
Yeah, and I just see Carl has put a question in there. Is it possible to force your melatonin production to start earlier without meds? Or would you suggest using melatonin for a while to get into that new habit? Or is there other things that you could try?
Light therapy is another thing, or kind of not even light therapy, but just changing your light. So melatonin is suppressed by light. So if we kind of turn the lights off, that's when melatonin starts to produce. So that's kind of why a very simple thing like kind of turning the lights off, you know, even dimming the lights, starting at like 8 p.m. and going on, and stopping your kind of light emitting devices and TV and all of that, that can then mean that your body starts to produce melatonin.
Great. Any other questions from anybody? Feel free to jump off mute or put it in the chat. I think that was really insightful. Learned so much from that. I'm a bit gutted about the naps, to be honest, because I was thinking that was the benefit of COVID, but I did have a nap yesterday, which totally screwed me up sleeping last night. So I definitely think you're right on that one.
Yeah, and a lot of these kind of tips, if you sleep well, then you can nap. If you don't have trouble sleeping, then it is maybe okay to kind of nap bar to kind of exercise a bit later, that sort of thing. But if you're having trouble sleeping, we'd definitely advise to kind of stop napping and try and make your body as tired as it can be for going to bed.
Great.
We do have one more question coming through here, and I can see from the richness of the questions, it's been a wonderful session. There's a lot of acknowledgement here, Kelly. So final question has been, what is the link with carbs and helping you sleep at night? And that's come from Paul.
Oh, we're helping you sleep. I would kind of probably nearly say the opposite, in that kind of having high carbs actually kind of can help you not, or can kind of give you poor sleep. So there, if you increase your sugar, your blood sugar, then it can kind of have a bit of an effect on your sleep, and kind of stop you from getting to sleep as quickly. So you would probably want to have kind of a low carb snack, or even having your high carbs maybe a couple of hours before bedtime, so that they're at least started to digest. Because it's really, you don't want to go to bed after a high carb meal. But I do see the point in that if you have kind of a high carb meal a couple of hours before you're full, so you're not hungry before you go to bed. So it's kind of that fine balance of maybe when you eat as well.
I know we did say final question. There's another question come through, another couple of questions. Can dehydration affect sleep?
Yeah, so actually dehydration can kind of lead to poor sleep, because your body is needing something else. So then that means that your body kind of can't start sleeping. The rhythms are both off. And yeah, kind of drinking alcohol, that's kind of the dehydration part, that can lead to kind of the poor sleep and the waking up in the middle of the night. Yeah, so it can definitely lead to kind of poor sleep. Really, you want to have a healthy, balanced diet that can help kind of promote better sleep.
And we have a question from Carl here. I've always struggled with poor sleep since I was a kid, as I tend to wake up every 2 to 3 hours, even when I'm completely knackered. Any advice?
So you might not like this advice, but one thing that we suggest to kind of those who have kind of in the middle of the night insomnia is that whenever you do wake up and you're struggling to get back to sleep, to actually get out of the bed and to go kind of maybe into the living room and do a bit of a mind-numbing task. Like, we've had people in our study that would fold their clothes, fold washing, and kind of get some of their housework chores done. Then they get sleepy again and they go back to bed and they'll fall asleep. And it's kind of trying to break that cycle of your brain kind of associating bed with sleep rather than bed with trying to get to sleep. Because the more times you wake up in the middle of the night trying to sleep and tossing and turning, your brain starts to get confused and think, oh, it's okay to do that in the bedroom. But actually we want to kind of make sure that the brain only associates kind of sleep with the bed.
Thanks, Kelly. I have one question myself. You mentioned that podcasts are okay to listen to, so which I quite enjoy, but I've been a bit afraid it's been stimulating the brain too much. Is it still okay to listen to podcasts? Could I take that as gospel?
So normally that was kind of in the context of maybe turning the TV off kind of that 30 minutes before and kind of changing your train of thought and kind of relaxing. Again, it's kind of like, we tell people to read their book to relax or listen to a podcast, but that in turn can nearly stimulate you more. So it's just kind of finding that balance of kind of maybe not having the lights on, or watching TV and having a podcast that 30 minutes before. But yeah, so maybe not fully gospel, but it can help relax your brain. It depends what kind of podcast you're listening to.
Actually, that's the next question. Sorry, we'll wrap it up. Can you recommend any good meditation podcasts?
So the Smiling Mind app does some really good kind of meditation and kind of body scanning. So it kind of it can take you through maybe just like a 5 to 7 minutes kind of body scan of trying to get you kind of present in the bed. But there's so many kind of on YouTube there's so many meditation podcasts that you can get. I don't know that many off the top of my head, sorry.
Thanks, Kelly. I just, on my behalf, thank you very much for an absolutely wonderful session. It's been really insightful, and thanks for sharing so generously your experience and your expertise. I just like to hand back to Roisin now to help us complete on our session this evening. Thank you, Kelly.
I think Ronan would agree that's the most questions we've ever got for any guest on, so this is definitely an emotive topic for people, and I think something that people are really acknowledging as such a pillar of our well-being. And we know that when we're not sleeping right, we don't eat right, we don't exercise right, so it's really good to do the fundamentals. So thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us tonight. That was so helpful, and we really appreciate you coming on board, and for everyone that was listening in. So yeah, as I said, the Irish 30 will be back next month. We're focusing on self-care for Mental Health Month, so hopefully we can get you all back then, and we have some exciting things planned over Christmas to help the Irish community who may have been hoping to get home this year but have to readjust our expectations slightly. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and especially thanks to Kelly for being our expert tonight.
Thank you.